Alright, welcome in everyone. I guess I'll just get started. So, the plan for today is to go over the basics of the campaign editor. So the course is going to be first an introduction, so what resources are available, and the absolute basics of setting up a campaign. Then we're going to go into more specific topics, so scripting, objectives, cutscenes, AI scripts, and then all the aesthetic fluff around the campaign. For the introductory section, it's going to go relatively fast, so I won't have time to answer questions. Once we get into the specific sections, though, I do really want people to ask questions about specific topics that they have that, like, maybe they couldn't figure out how to implement something. So if you have like a scripting question, ask when we get to scripting. Okay, so let's jump right in. So let's talk about what resources are available for learning the campaign editor. There's two main ones. So if we go to the campaign editor, there's going to be, in everyone's copy of the game, this Operation Brick Oven. This is a sort of joke campaign made by Liz that shows off most of the things that you can do in the editor. So it looks like this. You can enter rooms by clicking them. I'm going to enter room. And so each of the rooms does a different thing. If you've played this, you can sort of see like what each room does. And if you go into it in the editor, you can see how the room is set up. So you can see, okay, this is how the station is set up, all of these entities, this area, all of these ships. You can look here at the scripted events. And so this is a really great resource that shows off most of the editor and is accessible to everyone in your game already. And then the second resource we have is actually the base campaign. Ignore that. So if you go into the base campaign, there's a console command that you can run that that shows the campaign scripts. So once we get in here, skip all of this. Let's go skip the dialogue so she doesn't talk over me.
Admiral, since we're in the clear for the moment, would you like a refresher on our objectives one more time?
Alright, so we're going to open the console with F2, then type debug, enable campaign debug. By the way, this command is in text in the pins of the campaign development channel here in Discord. So if you forget it, just go there and copy it. So we're going to look at the scripting graph viewer here. And here we can see all of the scripts that are in the base campaign. Tasty, what if you're unable to open the debug commands? I have no idea. Stop using Mac, I'm sorry. So here we can see all of these scripts in the base campaign. So if you know something that happens in the main campaign that you want in your campaign, so for example, the way Caltrop is set up, you know, that sort of like defense mission. If you want that in your campaign, go to Caltrop, do that command, and we'll get what the scripts are in Caltrop. Okay, so those are the two main ways that you can learn the editor entirely within the game. So let's go into the basics of setting up a campaign. So when you go into the campaign editor, you have this fun blank slate. Something to note for the campaign is that there is no autosave. You have to save manually. It will save automatically when you do a quick test, but otherwise, there is no autosave. There is no confirmation box for this exit to main menu. You will occasionally lose progress because you hit this button on accident. Save consistently. I want to hammer this in. Save your campaign consistently. Get in the habit of it. Okay. So we're going to start off by saving as. We can just make a new campaign. Alright. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add an enemy faction with campaign factions over here on the left. We're going to make a new faction. Let's just make it OSP. So we can see here the player's faction. We can rename it, change colors. And this new faction, we can rename it. So let's just rename it OSP. We can change their livery. Let's just use the basic OSP colors. You can also change some other stuff here that doesn't matter too much right now. Now we need to add ships. So the way you add ships is in faction fleet designs. You cannot add ships within a level. You have to come back here, add ships here as a template, and then go back in. So we can pick between our player faction and our OSP faction. We can add ship from template or edit all to open the fleet editor. Let's just add some templates for our player faction. By the way, you make these templates in the fleet editor the way you normally make ship templates. So we can make some templates. Let's go over to OSP. This time let's make one in the editor. So we click edit all. And now we have access to the normal fleet editor. Let's just make a ruddle really quick here. Right, here is our basic ruddle. We can rename it. This is the name that will show up in the editor, so you want to name it something useful so you know what it is. Then the way we save it is we go return to campaign editor and update templates. So now that should appear in the protectorate's ship templates. We'll also make a character now. This is going to be for later use. We can change their name. Let's just say John Nebulous. We can change their title, which is like Fleet TAO or whatever. We can change their appearance. This was shown off in some devlog at some point. You can play with that, get whatever you want. Neko, I am recording. Okay, now we can make some rooms. So we can right-click somewhere and click New Location to make a new room. Let's make 2. We can also connect them by right-clicking and doing Connect and clicking the 2. When we left-click a room, we get all of the room details. So location name, let's just do Cliff 2, and we can change its skirmish map here to go all the way down Cliff. We can do the same thing here. We can name it something. Just second room, I don't know. We can make it whatever map we want. All of the campaign maps and skirmish maps are available. There's also some prototype maps, so if you want fun cut content in your campaigns, you have access to those. Alright, now the very basics of setting up a room. We can click here to enter the room. So we'll spawn ships over here on the left. Just spawn a couple ANS ships here. Right, and then let's spawn an OSP ship over here. When you have a ship or any entity selected, you get this little widget. It's if you've ever played KSP or any other 3D game, you have translate, rotate. These squares are sort of two-dimensional translate. Pretty straightforward. Alright, now remember to save consistently. So the way we test our campaign is by going up here. We have two buttons, Quick Test and Quick Test Current Room. Quick Test tests from the start of the campaign. Quick Test Current Room starts as if the player loaded an autosave from the start of this room. So let's quick test the current room. We have a bunch of settings for various variable states and difficulty and all sorts of stuff. Most of the time you don't need to touch any of this unless you have like a particularly interconnected campaign where, you know, your decisions earlier impact decisions later on. Then you may need to tweak variables to make sure there are no edge cases. But now that you can just test. Alright. And in a campaign, if you do nothing, if you set up no AI scripts,
detected.
the AI will default to annihilation. So they will just charge you and try to kill you. So you see here,
Receiving.
Struddle's running around.
Locking on the target.
Surprised it's not shooting more of this. Yeah. It's basically functional. So let's go back into the editor. Some other things to note. In campaign details, there's a lot of fluff here about like the description when you select the campaign and a bunch of stuff here. The important thing is to select a flagship. You really should pick a flagship. The game gets kind of weird if you don't. So we can select our Axford as the fleet flagship. Burning to save. Alright, so that is going to be the end of the introduction. So going forwards, if you have questions about any of the sections that we're in, please don't hesitate to ask. So let's get started on scripting. So scripts are how you like do things in the game and like make it more interesting than just annihilation throwing at each other. So most of our scripts are going to be here in Edit Scripted Events. We can make a new script. Let's name it something useful. So here's a basic initialization script. So we want this to run at the start of, as soon as the player comes into the room in order to set up the room in all of the ways we want. So let's say we want the player to have some dialogue spoken at them and have a warning icon to point out the riddle. In order to have an event trigger immediately, we just leave this trigger condition unconnected. And in sequence chain here, we're going to add all of the events we want to happen. So we're going to put narrative and play dialogue clip. We can plug this into sequence chain to make it happen. We pick our character. We can add some text. And then we can also make a warning icon appear over the riddle. So the way we're going to do that is with place callout. Let's do warning. Plug it in there. And then we want the position to be the riddle's current position. So to do that, we can go into ships, get room ship. This is going to be probably the most used node in your entire campaign. We can select the riddle, and we can get ship movement to select the position. So we plug ship into ship, position into position. And so now the script should trigger immediately, play some dialogue, and then place a call out at the riddle's current position. So let's quick test and see if that works. So there's the dialogue, and there's the warning. Once again, we can use the debug enable campaign debug. Same command as for the base campaign, and we can open scripting graph viewer and see all of our scripts. So we can see, okay, if a script didn't do what we expected, we can look in here, we can see, did it run in the first place? What are all of these variables putting out by hovering over these ports? And generally use this to figure out what went wrong if something does go wrong. Right. But our script worked. That's great. Let's add another script. So something to mention is that scripts block each other from executing. If one script is running, no other scripts can run until that script is done. So if you have a very long script, it will prevent your other scripts from happening until that is done. That means that the way you're supposed to use scripts in the game is to have them be relatively short, you know, some lines of dialogue, maybe an event happening in the game, and then just end. They shouldn't go on for very long. And whenever you want something to be triggered by an event in the game, you should make a new script for that. So let's make a new script that triggers when the Ruddle is dead. So let's just name it Ruddle Dead. Tasty, can't you get around that by making a single mega script for a full room? Yes, you can. That's not how they're meant to be used. You may run into mysterious performance issues if you do that. Okay. So now we want this to trigger when the Ruddle is dead. So we want to plug into trigger condition the Ruddle being dead. So I'm going to get room ship way off at the top. Then we're going to get ship damage status. So ship into ship. We want eliminated to be the trigger condition. Then we can play some dialogue for the Ruddle being dead. Okay, cool. So this should, if we go test it, this should trigger as soon as the Ruddle dies and then play that dialogue.
Fire control locking on.
Just use the Acello killers here just to make it quick.
There's been a launch. Missile reserves are low.
Right, so the script triggered, the dialogue played, everything worked. Okay. That is going to be it for the scripting section. So if you have any last minute questions for this before we move on to doing objectives, please ask them now. Otherwise, I'll just keep chugging. Okay. So let's set up a basic objective. So our objectives are going to be over here, but first let's figure out what the objective should be. Let's say we want the player to capture a station, like how Lamplight or any of the main campaign rooms do it. So first we need to set up a station, obviously. The station is going to be in two parts. It's going to be the physical object of the station. On most maps, that is just in the map of geometry. There's one exception though, at Catabasis, for whatever reason. The station is actually an entity that you can spawn into your own maps. So you could spawn the station from Catabasis in. There is also a small, something labeled small station in here. That is buggy. You should not use that. But we have this station here. we can move it around. Let's put like right here. Now let's put a docking point like right here. So in order to set up the actual like game entity of a station, we're going to start with an empty station root object. So we're going to go in here, we're going to find empty station root here. This is the sort of station controller. We're going to name this something useful, so comms station. There's a bunch of fluff that we can do here. Importantly, we need to change the owner to OSP so we can capture it. And we can change what ammo is there, what craft is there, fuel, various little settings. And then in order to make a boarding point, we're going to right click here, spawn nested entity. And we're going to find a boarding point, which is somewhere on here. Here we go, boarding point. Let's move this over to where we want it to be. Something to note, the game distinguishes between boarding and docking. Boarding is the thing where, you know, the ship has harpoons and attaches itself to the edge of the station, whereas docking is, you know, the clamp. It clamps onto the ship and then the docking thing extends. So make sure when you're setting this up that you know whether you want them to dock or to board. Alright, so let's get this nice and lined up. There we go. Again, and this will be on YouTube. So we're going to hook those to the surface of stations. Tasty, I don't think there's an automatic way to like lock objects to the surface. As long as the ship can physically reach the docking point, it should be fine. Obviously it may look weird, but it'll work. Okay, so we have this. It's important that we set this up as the child object, by the way. If you just have a boarding point floating around, it will not do anything. Alright, so we have this set up. Now let's get an objective. So add objectives, new objective, capture the station. And so objectives have their own scripts. These scripts have an entirely different use case to the normal scripts. The important distinction is that objective scripts execute all in one frame. So you cannot have dialogue or any kind of like extended event in objective scripts because they will end immediately. So the correct way to do it is that your objective script either writes a variable or does something relatively small that happens in a single frame, and then you have a normal script that triggers when the objective is completed, and that triggers your dialogue and whatever other stuff you want. So let's also make a variable while we're here. So in edit room variables, you can make a new Boolean variable. Just call it station captured. If you haven't done programming before, a Boolean is just a true or false. So we have this variable. Let's go into this script, and we want it so that when the objective completes, we write that variable. For whatever reason, we may want to access it later in the room. So this is the core of the objective script. If it gets true into pass, it'll pass. If it gets true into fail, it'll fail. And then it'll happen. Whatever comes out of here will happen. Alright, so let's make it so that when the station is boarded, it will pass. So select station. You can pick the station. Conveniently, this node has everything we would want. objectives boarding completed into pass condition. And then on pass, again, we can't do dialogue or other things here, but we can write a variable. So we can write a variable. The way we do this is a little finicky. So we have to select the variable and then plug it into the write variable section. Like this. And so this will write true into station captured when it passes. Okay. Remember to save. Alright, now we're going to make a normal script to trigger some dialogue when the objective completes. So let's make a new script for station captured. Here in trigger condition, let's do, where is it? Objective, objective info, and select objective. So capture the station, objective in here, and we can plug completed into trigger condition. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so this will trigger as soon as the objective is completed. And now we can play our dialogue or whatever other things we want. So, our character, some dialogue. So this is the correct way to play dialogue or other events after an objective completes. Don't do it in the objective script, do it in its own script, triggered by the objective completing. Alright, let's quick test this to see if it works.
Receiving. Lock target. Aye, aye.
Spiker. Under attack.
Launch confirmed. Missile reserves are low. Aye, aye.
Alright,
Proceeding.
board here. Now, once this completes, we should see our objective up here complete and dialogue play. So that's all set up right. That is going to conclude the section on objectives. Now let's talk about cutscenes. So there's a very robust cutscene editor down here with edit cutscenes. We can make a new cutscene like this. Let's do this, just intro. And we have a whole bunch of tracks. The most important track here is the camera track. So we can move this around as if it's any other object. We can right click here and open viewfinder to see where the camera is looking. Let's get it positioned like this. And then these squares on the end, normally these will scale an entity. We'll see that in more use later. But here it's going to change the camera FOV. So we can make this, say, a relatively tight FOV. Alright. So we have the camera set up in the initial position. Now we want to have it move around. So we can drag this around. We can hold control to have it snap. These are all explained in tooltips, I believe. And we can have this, let's say, just move closer to the ship. I made a mistake there, so I'm going to right click here and delete keyframe, just so it doesn't rotate on accident. Let's say I want the FOV to come out. So if we go back to the start and hit play, we can see how the camera moves. We can also add some more keyframes, like this. A bit too far. There we go. Okay. And so if we go through this now, we see a few issues. First is the camera rotates off well before we reach there. And second, it comes to an awkward stop at this waypoint right here. So the first way we're going to fix the rotation is by adding a keyframe right here. So we can right here select this position and update this keyframe to have the rotation we want. So now it should have mostly the rotation we want coming in. Okay, and second, we want to have the speed through here not stop and start awkwardly. To do that, we're going to select this position keyframe. We have to select this keyframe specifically, not the camera. And then we can increase the speed through it by using these scale widgets. And we can see the speed through this waypoint, and then the speed coming in and the speed coming out. It looks best if you try to match the three. And then this also is coming at an awkward angle. We can use the rotation tool to even it out, so it makes a nice little curve. We look here. And so now we don't have that awkward starting and stopping right there. All right. Okay. So let's say we also want to have our ship move in a particular way, and we want our camera to track the ship. So in order to track the ship, we can left-click on the track if it allows us, then do Add Entity Context. We have to select the ship we want, which is this one. This adds a little box. Now, any keyframes inside this box will be relative to this ship instead of just in the world. So let's say right here we want sort of an over-the-shoulder shot of the ship. So let's get this over here. Yeah, right there. Alright, and now because this is in this entity context, it will be relative to the ship, and even if the ship has moved for whatever reason, it will still have this relative positioning. We can also change the size of the entity context if that is necessary. We can also add a track to make the script or to make the ship move. So we can add a track for the ship. And like with the camera, we can add keyframes for it. We want to have an initial keyframe so it doesn't paint off into God knows where. So we want to make an initial keyframe, and then we can just have it move by making a new keyframe. Right. So if we watch the cutscene now, our rotation is now a little bit off, but we see how the camera now tracks the ship's current position. That way, even though the ship moved, this entity context makes sure that it's following the ship along. The cutscene editor also has a ton of other things that we can do. We can have a screen fade, so we can have it, say, fade in at the start of the level. We can change how long this fade is. We can trigger dialogue. We can trigger scripts if we want to, like, kill a ship or have a ship start shooting midway through the cutscene. We can do that with scripts here. Yeah, so that is the basics of the cutscene. We also will need a script to trigger the cutscene to start. So we're going to do that in Edit Scripted Events. We already have our initialization script. So let's add in right here a play cutscene node using our intro cutscene. And so this, we can pick the cutscene. There's a whole bunch of stuff here that can help make it look a little bit nicer. We won't mess with any of that right now. Yeah, so this should, as soon as the room starts, play the cutscene. Once the cutscene is done, play dialogue. There are a few questions in chat. So, what's the way to have art like the beginning cutscene? That is called an animatic. In the editor, there's play animatic. You do have to mod these in. I did write a guide for how to mod these, but you do have to get an MP4 outside the game, put it in Unity, mod it into the game, then it'll show up in this node. Can the camera track fighters or missiles? The answer is no. If you know how they're going to move, you can have the camera kind of follow them, but you can't get an entity context for them because they don't exist in the room. So you also can't track ships that didn't start in this room. So anything that isn't in the room when you made the cutscene cannot be tracked by an entity context. Tasty asks, are fights during cutscenes deterministic? They're all like scripted in the game. So if you want a ship to reliably die, there is a node. Where is it? Might be a narrative. Oh. Okay, well, somewhere in here is a way to forcibly kill a ship. Here we go. Force eliminate ship. So, like, if you want a ship to be guaranteed dead at the end of the cutscene, you can use this node. Alright, a few other questions. 8ball asks, can you make a cutscene unskippable? Yep, you just toggle that. Oak asks, is there a way to add casualty effects? Not to my knowledge. There is a... You can damage a ship, but you can't... You can't trigger crits. ML, once a ship is on a track in a cutscene, can you unhook it from the track later in the cutscene? Not... Okay, yes, I know what you mean. No, there is a fun trick that you can do where you can have a cutscene trigger a second cutscene. That is the way to do that. I do that in the Hemlock campaign. John, there is no way to make a reactor overload happen. Okay, so let's just quickly see what this cutscene looks like in game first. Emily, I can show you how to do that once we're done with the main talk. Alright, so this is what it looks like in game. Something to note is that obviously the cutscene editor can't show you scripts, so they can't show you ships shooting at each other. So you will have to test if you want to make sure that ships are firing correctly.
Enemy missile incoming.
You will have to test it in game when you do that. Okay, so that's how we do cutscenes. Now, AI scripts. This feels intimidating to a lot of people. It isn't that hard. The core idea of AI scripting is that the AI doesn't... The AI isn't very dynamic. You give it a mission, and it does that mission. If you give it multiple missions, it does the one that's highest priority. It won't, like, choose between them. So a lot of AI scripting is saying, if this state, do this mission. So let's make it so that our Ruddles first hide behind this rock over here. And then when we approach the station, they'll come out and attack us. So let's move this out behind the rock. Let's not put it in the rock. like it right there. Let's also give it a Ruddle friend so it isn't quite so lonely. Alright. So let's make an AI script using AI scripting down here. You may remember that even though we didn't have an AI script, they still used a basic annihilation AI. If you want to have an AI script and have that mission for whatever reason, it's in goals, basic annihilation goal. If we just plug it in like this, it'll work. This will behave the same way as if we had no script at all. But let's make something fancier. So we want our Ruddles to hide back here, and then once we're around the station, they'll come in and attack. So let's make an area definition. Area definitions are sort of the core of AI scripting. They allow you to tell the AI specific places on the map that are good ambush spots or areas that they should defend for story reasons. So area definition here. We can change its shape. It's by default a sphere. We can change it to a cube or a half space. Usually sphere or cube are what you're going to do. We can scale it, rotate it, get it to be like a relatively small box back here. Here we go. Alright, so let's say this is where we want the Ruddles to start before they ambush us. So, Ruddle ambush. We can change its color so it's easier to read on the map. So let's make it red because it's OSP zone. And let's make another one over here to be the area that triggers the ambush. So let's make another area. Let's keep this one as a sphere. Let's make this one also a little bigger. Or actually, never mind. Not too big. Alright. So let's make this one the ambush trigger. We'll make it orange, I guess, to indicate that it's triggering the OSP. So the ships we want to start over here, hide over here. Once one of our ships enters this sphere, they'll come out and attack us. So the way we implement that, going into AI scripting, the way we make the AI swap between two missions is using this collect missions if. So how this is going to work is that our condition is going to be ships have entered the sphere. If they are in the sphere, we want them to attack. If they are not in the sphere, we want them to hide. So the hide mission is going to be a hold in area mission. And we need to give it an area and what units to use. So our area is going to be in entities, select world area. RDJ, this is recorded. Let's do Ruddle ambush, plug that into area. So if the condition is false, the Ruddles will hold in the area. We also need to tell the game that those Ruddles should be a pair together. So we're going to do that with declare task unit. Let's name it Ruddles. And we need to get AI ship. We can copy paste this with Control C, Control V, just so we don't have to go through menus. Select our two AI ships. We have to plug both of them into members, and then optionally one into lead unit. This arrangement does not work. You need all of the ships in members, and then one of the ships in the lead unit. We can also override role. You don't normally need to do this. The AI is pretty good about figuring out what ships should do what. But if you're worried about your beam solly being called a cringe capper, you can override that here. Then we can plug unit into units. And so This will now make it so that our ruddles will hide in this area when this condition is false. We do have to set up the condition. So for that, let's get a ship's inside area, a player's faction fleet info, and get the area. Alright, so when they're in the ambush area, and we need to get the player's active ships. So when any of the player's active ships are in the ambush area, this will output true, which means it'll swap from hold an area to our attack mission. So for the attack mission, we're going to do, let's just do defend area. Plug this in here. We need the area for them to defend, which will just be the same ambush trigger. And we need our task unit. Alright, so this is fully set up so that when player ships are not in the area, they'll hide. When they are in the area, they'll attack. These priority markers, you don't really need to mess with them. The idea is that if your script somehow messes up and gives the AI multiple missions, setting these priorities means that you can decide which one is sort of the default behavior. So let's make it so that attacking is the default behavior by giving it a higher priority. So if for whatever reason the AI managed to get 2 of these missions, it'll default to attacking. Alright, so let's save and test to see how this works. This triggering with areas can be used to start cutscenes, correct? That is correct. You could make the same logic that swaps the missions to also trigger a script. Levy is their way to make it so the shuttles would only attack if they detected the cruiser, even if it was in the zone. Probably. I'm not exactly sure what you mean, but I'm almost certain the answer is yes.
Standing by.
Okay. So an invaluable tool for figuring out what your AI is doing is to run that same debug enable campaign debug. And in the debug menu, we now have AI visualizer. Not being very good about this hiding thing, but we can see what mission they have. So right now we see that they have the hold an area mission, which is what we expect. They're trying to hide in this area.
Send
Now
traffic.
let's have our ship
Helm, take us in.
come over here, enter the area. We can watch once we enter the area, these should swap.
Warning. Incoming
Okay,
missile.
or it'll shoot us. The cost of making this area a bit too big, I guess. So something to note when we
Enemy
go
fire
back in
inbound.
here is to move this area a bit over
They
this
are
way
chewing us up here.
so they can't see us.
Component destroyed.
So the AI works on 15-second update intervals. So it will take them 15 seconds to go from up to 15 seconds to change missions. There is a node to force them to update the mission if you're trying to do like a quick ambush or something. But we see that they now have swapped their mission from holding to heading to this area. They should come attack us. Unless that one's EP. I don't know why that one's EP. Visibility override. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what this one's doing. Something to make a note of when we go tweak it later is that they may have some issues. But we see them
Missile
go into this
detected.
area and then try to attack our ship. Oh, now it's coming. Yeah, who knows what that one's doing. Alright, so that is basic AI script. We saw this one had some problems. We probably need to tweak this area up here and maybe Or maybe this got hit somehow. I think it got hit by a rocket. Anyway, that basically works. Tasty, can the AI nodes be applied to friendly ships as well? You can make a friendly AI by making any other AI. So we can change allegiance to friendly. And then this guy can have AI ships with AI nodes, and then you can have a teammate, an AI-controlled teammate. Obviously, you cannot AI control the player's ships, but you can AI control friendly ships. Spy, will we go over fire offboard deception at some point? No, because I do not know how to do that. I'm sorry. I think Glimmering Reach does that in the base campaign. Alright, well, that is it for AI scripts. Again, please do ask questions. Otherwise, I'm going to go into the various fluff that is available in the campaign. Ganon, is there a way to make a 3-way firefight? Not really. You can't make a 1v1v1, but you can make a 2v1, and you can make people switch sides. Kind of. It's not very good. You have some options, but 1v1v1 is not possible. Abel, can entire factions change between neutral and friendly and such, or do we have to individually transfer ships between factions? You do have to transfer them. Something annoying is that is bugged currently. It will hopefully be fixed, but currently you cannot transfer ships between teams. It might be possible in some cases, but to my knowledge, it's not possible. Well, it is possible, but they won't have any AI when they're transferred. Rilka, is there any logic that's triggered specifically off of co-op? I.e., you only transfer CH to player if you have 3 co-op players or more. Maybe? If we go into players... Get local player. My vibe is no, but I'm sure a custom node could do that. You can make things trigger based on difficulty. That is not very difficult. If you do like int by difficulty and sequence switch. If you do like this, so 0, 1, 2, it'll do this one if it's easy, this one if it's medium, this one if it's hard. So you can make it triggered by difficulty very easily. Make it triggered by player count, I don't think you can do. Can you script neutral tracks to manually fire on tracks? So, okay. The neutral faction acts like a friendly faction. So you can have neutral ships fire on enemy ships, but they cannot, under any circumstances, fire on friendly ships. Even if you give them an order to do so, they will not shoot. And same the other way. Friendly ships will not shoot at neutrals, to my knowledge. Will AI be okay if it gets a new ship mid-mission? The ship that you transferred currently, it is bugged and it will not have AI. Where's the guide for the modding for animation? That is in campaign development. It should be in the pins. 8-ball to do 2 enemy factions share data link. Yes, also having 2 enemy factions sometimes breaks the AI, sometimes it doesn't. We don't know when it does or doesn't, so it might work, it might not. Rilk, yeah, that's the right idea for how to script that. Tasty, do neutral ships share data link? They share data link with other neutral ships, but not with friendlies. Levy, how does the AI know to retreat? So you script retreating. So in AI scripting, there is a mission goal, or mission. Retreat units. So if we set this to have a really high priority, plug this in here. If we leave units unconnected, it will apply to everything. Retreat condition, so let's say, I don't know, when the station is, or when the objective is completed, they'll retreat. Right, so this will make it so that when the objective is completed, all of the ships will retreat to whatever withdrawal line is closest. This retreat units is special in that it has this nice little node that automatically turns it on or off. And so if we just set to have a really high priority, this will override all of the other missions and they'll all run away once this succeeds. I did want to get into looking at some of the fluff in the campaign before we get started, before we keep going into more questions. ML, yes, bigger number, higher priority. Okay, so really quick, let's look at some of the map underlay stuff. So this is like the background map that you see in the campaign. We access it with system map underlay over here on the left. We can tweak some settings so we can rename things. So we can rename the Star of Bethel 2. We can change its radius so we can make it smaller or bigger. We can change its color. We can change this background gradient with gradient color, gradient radius. We can also add planets by right-clicking, add child, and add a whole bunch of things. Let's just add a planet. We can change the orbit. We can change the angle. We can change the color. A whole bunch of stuff. Let's just name it something uncreative. Alright, and then when we go back into the room, we can set these up as skybox objects. So over here on the left, we have spawn new skybox entity. We can use this to make that star and planet that we just set up. So let's make a star. And down here, we can do underlay reference. So we can make it align to the star. And when we click align, it now matches the actual location on the map, like relative to this room. So if you want like consistent positioning, that does it. We also see that the star adds some nice dynamic lighting. In the star, this upper field controls how it lights the skybox, and then this lower field controls how it lights the game world. So if we want a less intense light, we can bring this down. I believe if we want no light at all, we can turn it to 0 and make like an evil cliff. Yeah, so remember to save. We can also add our planet. Where is it? There. So let's change this to one of the planets. The base campaign comes with 3 different planets. Johnny has a pack of, I think it's like 10 or so skybox objects. So if you want more than these basic 3, it will have to be modded in, but there's already some mods out there for it. We can align it to our planet. And now we see a slight issue, that it is all the way over there. Let's say we want it to be a bit bigger. So where are we? Okay. This little circle is the map. I believe the circle is the withdrawal line. So what we can do is we can bring this planet closer in. We bring it closer in, when we align it, it doesn't care about distance, it just cares about angle. So when we align to reference, it'll just fix the angle, and it'll stay at the same distance. So that way we can get it closer or farther, however we want it. Yeah. So that is going to be all for the fluff that I wanted to talk about. Yeah, so I have some extra topics to go over. Otherwise, I'll just keep answering questions until we get bored. Alright, a bit higher up. 8-ball, do enemy factions shoot at neutrals? I believe they do, if you tell them to. I don't think they do by default. Ganon, so to have separate non-shared entities is best to keep them one at a time. That is correct currently. Hopefully it will be fixed, I think. Hopefully. Ilka, if an enemy ship retreats, are you able to add it back into the pool of enemy ships, so to speak? You will have to do that with variables. So you'll have to make, like, on the overworld map, you'll have to make, like, a global variable, like, Ruddles survived. And so if this is true, then a subsequent level will know that it can spawn in Ruddles. If it's false, it won't. So it is possible to do that, but you'll have to do that yourself. There is a pursuit mechanic down here where if the player leaves the room early, you can have them chase the player. But I believe they do have to be in the room. So if they retreat, they can't come back and pursue, I think. I'm not sure. A-ball, can we control the areas of the map that transit you to the next area beyond just the system map? If you can kind of squish it. So if we make like this, we can see that we can sort of cut off one of them. All of the arcs are a 90-degree arc centered at the location, the direction on the system map. There is this handy rotate map button that allows you to change the map geometry. So if you want, like, say if you want the player to have a closer trip to the withdrawal line, you can rotate it like this. If you want them to have a farther trip, it can be like this, whatever. But that lets you align things between the map geometry and the system map, but you can't, like, make the angle smaller. Rilka, so it won't preserve the damage from the previous fight. That is correct if you don't do pursuit. If you do pursuit, they will keep the same damage. Alright, that seems like I'm done with the backlog of questions. Yeah, again, that's going to be the end of the main scripted talk. So you guys are welcome to go if you have somewhere else you want to be. But I will stick around until we're out of questions. Brilliant. Will variants of line ships remain consistent between instances of a map? You can't copy them between maps. There is a regenerate button. So if you're willing to gamble, you can re-roll it until you get the version you want. If they pursue you, they'll also be consistent. Spy, couldn't you file edit it? Probably. I don't know how to do that, but you could probably do that. Roka, is there a way to add custom maps to the campaign editor, or is that something we have to wait for the modders themselves to update? Yes. So maps need to use the new addressable system. So most old maps didn't do this, so they won't work. However, most new maps and some of the old maps use addressables, and so those should just work. in the campaign editor. It depends. It's up to the modder to update it, basically. Bitzenhauser, has anyone figured out how to make NPC ships dock? I believe they cannot. I believe the answer is no. There is, if you make a ship, there is an spawn allocation. If you set to docked allocation, docked at boarding point, this will make it spawn docked to this boarding point. It'll also like teleport there, so don't worry about its current position. But no, there's no way to make it AI dock. Fitzenhauser, also can we add more character portraits within a standalone mod? No. All of those portraits, let's go here. There are bespoke portraits. These are just the ones in the base game. So you can make, I don't know, Hazel or whatever. But if you want to add more bespoke portraits, you do have to mount those in. These are dynamically generated, obviously, but it is possible, actually, to add new portrait sets, but those also have to be modded. Levy, is there a way to guarantee a ship has certain things for you to loot from them? You could make it so that the ship refuses to fire some of them. I think that is the best way you're gonna do that. I think you can't add ammo to ships. That may have changed since I looked at it. Let's look. I'm gonna guess that it's not possible, and the best way is going to be to just not let it shoot those weapons. There is a way to add stuff to stations, though. You can add ammo or craft to stations based on the script, so that's nice. It's presumably possible for some modder to add a custom node that adds it to ships. Rook, pretty sure there's an add ammo craft option. Works on ships. Again, I don't know if it works on ships. It definitely works on stations. Not sure about ships. 8-Ball, can we check magazines for certain contents so we can have ships carry around story MacGuffins? I believe. You might not be able to read. Oh, yeah, no, you can. So that's gonna be get ship weapon group. So let's see, where's, yeah. So if we want, okay, when this ship has no ammo, we can do, no cell killers. So if this equals 0, then something happens. So we can make something like this to read ammo counts. Tasty, is there a way to randomly assign positions to ships, or make it so that there are multiple ships that can spawn, but the ones that do are random? You can make conditional spawns. So if we want like an enemy ship that spawns here, we could give it a conditional spawn allocation, edit this graph, and say, okay, if a random number, random range in, so 1 or 0 or 1, I think. I'm not sure if these are inclusive. Let's just 0 to 10 just in case. In comparison, less than or equal to 5. So if we do something like this, it should be a 50-50 whether this ship spawns. To assign random positions to ships, to my knowledge, the only way to directly write a ship's position is with cutscenes. So you could, if you wanted to be really fancy, make the game randomly pick between a few cutscenes that shuffle the ships around, depending on which cutscene it picked. That would be the main way. The other way would be just with conditional spawns. Again, and if the map has the addressable thing needed, it should just turn up in the list. Yes, if the map uses addressables, it just shows up. Steel Griffin, could this also be used to change what ammo ship has based on difficulty then? Again, I don't think you can write ammo, but you can read ammo. Oh, well, yeah, you can change entirely what type of ship spawns. So you can control ship spawn difficulty. So if we made like we could have like a ruddle and like a better ruddle, I don't know, and make it so that this one spawns on easy and medium, and this one spawns on only hard. So if we do it like this and imagine, this is an easier ship, this is a harder ship, we could make it so that the enemy has harder ships on hard. Vincent Hauser, I'm also trying to make a script fire when a ship is jammed, but haven't spent too much trying to get it to work. Was trying ship set details, detected equals 0, but just fires right when the game starts. Way to figure out when the player fires a certain weapon would work, maybe. I don't know if... I don't know if that's possible. I would have to noodle around in the editor to figure out how to make that happen. If you want, you can ask in campaign development to see if other people have come up with that idea. 8-ball, can area triggers moved or be attached to ships? No, but you can you can do it. You can set it up differently. So instead of plugging it into area, we could set up like center and radius. So if we make it so that like, instead we want it so that when a player ship is within a certain area or within a certain radius of an OSP ship. So let's get root ship movement. If we did something like this, this will output true whenever a player ship is within 1 kilometer of this ship, and this will dynamically update. So you can't make areas move, but you can do it like this instead to do the same thing, basically. Also, something to note: engine units are 10 meters. So setting this to 100 means 1 kilometer. Gannon, I believe someone asked about trying to pull just to skybox. He said something about the gas giant big map being cool. Yes, there is there is one of these maps, gas rig, is some Ace Combat shit. This is a very cool map that I'm sure someone will use at some point. For whatever purposes. Tasty, if a cutscene references ship movement that didn't spawn due to difficulty or otherwise, what happens? I have no idea. I would encourage you to try not to do that. The editor doesn't make many protections for you screwing yourself over. So if you make a soft lock, it'll just soft lock and you can't fix that. Do we know if there's any timeline for adding textures to all the prototype maps like Gas Rig? I would my guess would be that they're never getting added. But maybe they are. I have no idea. 8 balls, there a way to conceal reveal rooms on the system map outside of acts? No, it has to be with acts. The act system is pretty... it works pretty much how you would want it to work. The only issue is that the only way to trigger an act transition is by going to a specific room. But like the act transition doesn't automatically spawn something on the screen. It doesn't automatically do anything. So you can make relatively seamless transitions between acts, with the restriction that it has to be tied to a specific room that does it. Because there's a way to stop allied ships from counting for station boarding. I was having issues when I had allied ships dock to a station and they start the boarding process immediately on map load. Well, I am polite does that, so it must be possible. I'm not sure how you would do that, but it must be possible. Rollian, is it possible to lock rooms behind objective conditions? No. You could make it so that you die if you enter the objective room, or if you enter the room without completing the objective. You could, but you can't, like... The short answer is no. Cutscene question, how do you add text to the screen? Let's get to the cutscene. I assume you mean like the pop-up text, not dialogue. Dialogue you do here. You can add track screen text, and so this way we can add some text. Like this, I think works. So I think this will work. Yeah. In the wrong order, but you know. That's how you add text. Can craft set off area triggers? Maybe?
We hear you.
Craft are hard to interact with. I believe there are some nodes for it. Let's go craft. Plate set details. Nope. Select craft plates. My vibe is going to be no. They cannot. Quinn, I think you did not mean to send that here. Tasty, can the angle of weapon mounts or positions they are set to be fired at be directly accessed and changed by the AI? The AI can't pause fire. Well, okay. You can make a script to make the AI pause fire. So that's gonna be get room ship, order fire weapons, get ship weapon group, get ship track. So with all of this together, we have the shooter ship, we have the target ship. You can do it like this, have it shoot a track, select the ship, get the weapon group, do it like this, and so now this node will have, oh sorry, like that. this node will have them shoot 10 missiles at a target. Angle of load. So you can script the AI to shoot at a specific position. The AI, I don't like the AI can't read that, and it won't pause fire on its own, to my knowledge. Okay, Tasty, thanks for copying that. It's possible to make a coordinate node, then input that coordinate into an area for the origin of the area. I would recommend that if you have a static area of the map that you want to interact with, that you make an area definition. If you expect that to change, then you can use that, like, you can use this whole center and radius thing. So for example, if you wanted it to be like random, then you would have to use center and radius. But if it's a specific location that is not dynamic, use an area definition. Well, can we spawn craft without a carrier? No. This was an argument in testing. You cannot spawn craft without a carrier. You can pull craft directly from a hangar with this node here. So you can have a carrier like hidden somewhere on the map that the player can never access, and then use this node to make it launch flights instantly and teleport them to a position. So that is what Beggar's Hollow does, and that's probably the best way to do it. Also, I wasn't explicit about this at the start, but yes, this will have spoilers for the campaign. And in the chat, don't worry about spoiling things about the campaign. Bits and Hazard, I've never tried that, but if it works, it works. Oh yeah, that is true. There is a node in here, toggle entity signatures. So if you can do this to like make the carrier invisible to radar, it will still be visible to like visual. So you can use this to hide it, use this to make it launch craft, and then I believe if you make well, this will be set up. If you just don't give it AI, I believe it'll all work. You could also just kill the ship once the craft are out, which will also work, I think. Can you add capture points to this? Let me pull up the Hemlock campaign. Yes. It is hard to do. So if you don't know, I've made a tutorial campaign for Task Force Hemlock. Please play it. I will also give you this campaign file if you want to see it. You have the way I did it is you have these like nested areas. So this outer sphere is the capture area. This inner sphere is the one that like the AI knows to like go to attack. And then you have to make a lot of scripts in order to make them capture and do all of the stuff. So it is possible. It's very tedious, but it is possible. Making the AI know what to do about control is massively harder. I have no idea how you're gonna do that, but it is possible to set up control points. The critical node here, by the way, is place POI. This is how you make the control point like spheres appear on the map. And then everything else is the logic for making control points happen, you know. Abel, does the capture the flag exist in the campaign editor at all? Again, you could custom script that. That isn't like you don't have the UI elements to do that, but you could script it to have it capture the flag game mode. Wilka, is there a list of which mod maps have been updated? Not to my knowledge. It'll most modern maps have it, most old maps don't, is my short summary of what will probably work. But it is pretty plug and play. Just subscribe to the map, enable it, see if it works, and then if it works, it works. You don't have to do anything fancy. Tasty, are you able to copy and send scripts as files? Kind of. They're all in an XML file. It is probably possible to copy paste it, to grab the specific script from the XML file and then send it to someone else. I haven't tried that, but it is probably possible. Liz said it is probably possible. Levy, yes, anyone is welcome to look at the Hemlock campaign. However you want. Ari, can battle short on and MCON behaviors be included in the AI script? Yes, there are specifically battle short, and I believe MCON is in here. No, it isn't. Yeah, you can't have a ship MCON. You could make the ship scram if you want to be overly aggressive, but you can force speed short. I believe it is possible to put Neb campaigns on GitHub. I've been meaning to try to figure that out, but I believe it is possible if you want to do campaigns with multiple people's hands on it. Show us how the scripts for Salt and Windy being dead in the water work. Yeah, I should have a save. So the short answer is that they force a reactor scram. Let me pull up one of these. This is someone else's campaign save, so don't judge them. Where's her palace? So again, the base campaign is going to be probably the best resource for seeing these things. Load into the level that you know, like, you want to copy some mechanic from it and see what that script does. Once it loads here.
Admiral, I have some over. No, what?
Okay, scripting graph viewer, engineering casualty. So we can look here at how it triggers specifically. In this case, it is this much time after the first container is detected, or if the ship gets too close to the end. And then it uses this node in order to force its reactor down. That says the dialog. And then it repairs using this script, and it just unsets the scram when you want it to repair. So once you set it, it's there permanently until you unset it. Something to note is if the player manages to leave, the ship is stuck scrammed. So you do have to make like a fallback script like this that unscrams the ship if they do manage to leave early. But that's the setup. Rook, the saving thing was a slightly different issue. It was because the game was using engine time instead of time elapsed, which, for niche reasons, breaks things. Yeah. Alright, well, it looks like there are no more questions. So unless someone has questions that they're holding out on, I guess we can wrap up here. Oh, I see a lot of people typing now that I say that. Alright, well, thanks everyone for coming. I hope this was helpful for everyone to see the basics of the campaign editor and ask some very specific questions. Again, campaign development is the place to talk about this. I try to be active in there and answer questions. There's also a growing cadre of people who know what they're doing and can help figure things out, and you can just talk to people, talk about your campaign and what ideas you have.